Hello everyone, welcome to the fourth installment of Super Leader Saturdays. Today's subject is the why behind Lead Like a Superhero. A lot of people have come to me when I was talking about the book. They asked me, so why a book on leadership, or why did you pick that subject, or how did it come to be? How did the book come to be? And I thought this was awesome. I mean, this was a good question. And even my friend David Hancock, who is the publisher, the head publisher at Morgan James, he's the founder. That was the first question he asked me. He says, so how did you get the idea for the book? So I thought I would make a live with the story behind the book, Lead Like a Superhero. I would explain how I got from a young kid to an adult who actually wrote a book about leadership and with a superhero template. So today, that's the subject. So I've grown up in I had a tough childhood. My parents divorced twice, and my father was not father of the year. He was not a very present father. My parents divorced twice. They divorced once when I was 2 years old. So I was raised at times by my two parents. When they divorced, I went to live with my mother at first, then with my father, later with my grandparents, and after that my parents came back together, and then I was raised for the rest of my teen years by my single mother. But the point to all this is I saw firsthand as a young man, as a young boy growing up, the terrible, devastating effects of what happens when leadership is lacking. Because in my book, I do mention, in the book, Lead Like a Superhero. By the way, this is what I'm talking about today. If you've never been to this Super Leader Saturdays sessions that I do every Saturday, I talk about the book. I give some content from the book, and that's what I'm doing right now if you just joined. So at the time, I realized and I saw firsthand and I lived the consequences of what happens when leadership is lacking in a young man's life, or a young woman, because my book is by no means intended just for men, okay? I just want to make that clear from the get-go. So if you're a young woman, if you're an older woman, if you're a leader in a corporation and you're a woman, the book is still very palatable and very relevant to women also. But as a young man, I really felt the lack of leadership and the devastating effects that these could have on my life. My father, as I said, was not very present. He divorced, so he wasn't there. And when he was not very responsible. He was a man who, unfortunately, couldn't hold on a job, and he was not a good provider. And so his leadership skills were severely lacking. And so that had some bad effects on me growing up. One of the first ones, the first negative effects it had on me was I grew up very insecure. Okay, when you don't have a good father figure, a good leader in your family, if you're led to your own devices growing up, you're going to be very insecure. You're going to be scared. You're not going to feel secure. And this is what is very important about leadership. Good leadership, makes us feel secure. Simon Sinek says that all the time, and he's absolutely spot on. By the way, if you don't know who Simon Sinek is, go to YouTube, check him out, listen to his podcasts, his YouTube videos. You're going to learn a lot. Number two, the effect of not having a father growing up, lacking leadership or direction growing up, the bad negative effect was that I had no self-confidence. So I grew up very, very insecure, but I also severely lacked self-confidence. And that made me realize that good leadership gives us confidence. It empowers us. So that's another very important point. And I'm going to get to the book later. I just want you to see the buildup of how I grew up, what I learned along the way, and how I got to actually write a book on leadership and on superheroes. So I'm not just going to tell you how I got the idea, because that's kind of like basic. I'll get to that later. So number one, I felt very insecure. I had no self-confidence, and good leadership empowers us, so it gives us confidence. When you have a good father figure or a good mother figure in your life when you're young, good parents, a solid family background, that gives you confidence. And number three, good leadership gives you a sense of direction. And as I was growing up, from young boy to teen years to a young man in my 20s, I didn't know where I was going. I had no clue what I was going to do with my life. And since I didn't have the family background with solid backbone and solid leaders, and I don't want to diss my mom here, but she was just doing the best she could as a single mother, but it was just not cutting it for me, okay? So I was missing the direction that good leadership gives to a young man. So I suffered greatly from lack of good leadership. Okay, so that was the first thing that molded me, that molded my character. And obviously, what happens when you are missing something, when you don't have that very essential thing in your life, which is good leadership? What happens? Well, if you're smart, and I think I was pretty smart, you go looking for it. Okay, so in my teens and young adulthood, what ended up happening is, since I didn't have it in my father, I went looking for it. So where did I look for good leadership or good principles to help me compensate for the lack of leadership I had as a kid? Well, I became a Christian. So that was the first thing. God became the anchor in my life that compensated for the lack of good leadership from my father. Okay, it didn't. How can I put this? It didn't immediately compensate fully, because when you embark in a relationship with God, it's a process. But it did help quite a bit, and it did save me from a lot of terrible mistakes that I could have made along the way. When you're in your teens and you have a dysfunctional family background, you can end up hanging out with gangs, you can end up starting to drink, hanging out with the wrong crowd, using drugs, and I did none of that. And I really believe it was my faith that held me back. A good pastor friend once told me, he said, you know, Sebastian, it takes as much power from God to keep a man from the world as it does to take a man from the world. And I never forgot that, because when he told me that, I realized just how much God had protected me in my youth from doing crazy, stupid things. I mean, as young people, oftentimes we're tempted to do stupid things, and I didn't do too many stupid things. In fact, I was sometimes just too well behaved for the taste of some. Anyway, so my relationship with God greatly helped. And in the Psalms, Psalm 27:10 says, "Though my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me." Now, my mother and father did not forsake me, but the reality that was of a dysfunctional family, and the fact that I had an absent father or a disengaged father, well, you know what? The Lord did receive me, and He built me up from that moment on. So what else ended up happening? Well, in my early 20s, I joined the church. I had converted to Jesus when I was about 10 years old, and 10 years later, I went back to that very church. And as a man still on the lookout for these principles, these values, these good men that I could maybe model myself after, that's what I did. I went to that church, and there were some good elders. There were some good men of God, solid family men who were responsible, who were holding down their jobs, who were good to their wives, good to their families, and I clung to them. I mean, I was thirsty for it. I was hungry for it, so I just clung to them, and I tried to learn from them as much as I possibly could. And obviously, they didn't sit down with me very often. It did happen when I went to have coffee with them. At the time, I didn't drink coffee, so I had a soft drink. They had coffee. But the point is, I didn't have the opportunity to do that very often, but I was a keen observer, and I just looked at the way they walked, and I gained a lot from that. I would just suck it all up, and I would use it to learn leadership from them. I mean, leadership begins at home. And they were very good family men. Like I said, they were very good leaders in their own households. They were also good leaders in the church. And I just observed them and looked at them. So what ended up happening at that time was that I was growing myself. You know, I was learning the values, learning to build up my own character, and I was becoming more involved in my local church at the time. I even began preaching on occasion. I began giving some teachings for Sunday school. I even gave a course eventually that was based on the 4 pillars of a man's heart, another video I did a while back. So I gave an adult class for men at the time because I was gaining so much from all the books I was reading. That's another thing I was doing. I started reading a lot of books when I was about 18. Again, I wasn't reading fiction. I was reading nonfiction. I was reading books on marriage, of all things. I mean, do you know many 20-year-olds who are so desperate to succeed at marriage, who are going to take books on marriage and start devouring them? Well, that was me. I mean, I was so scarred by my parents' divorce that I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to make the same mistakes they did. So I wanted to be prepared for marriage. I wanted to be prepared to be a family man, to be a dad. And I started reading those books about manhood and biblical manhood and walking with Christ and all these books. So they were building up slowly my leadership. I was growing as a leader back then, even though I didn't know it at the time. And here's the key. When you're growing as a leader, when you're becoming a leader, oftentimes you just don't know it. I mean, God uses your circumstances, He uses your trials, He uses all kinds of stuff in your life to build you up as a leader. But you're not going through life saying, "Oh, I'm becoming a leader now. Oh, I'm learning so much now. I know I'm going to be a good leader." You don't think like that. It's just something that God uses in your life to chisel you, like a good artist would do, like Da Vinci, or not Da Vinci. Who is it? Michelangelo would do with David. You know, he said that David was already in the block of marble. He just had to remove what was blocking David, all the rock that surrounded him. So that's how he said he made David, which is amazing. But that's what God does oftentimes. He just removes all the crap in our lives. Forgive my language. He just removes all the crap and chisels everything away to discover the leader in us. So that's what God was doing. And finally, last but not least, and here's where I'm getting at, here's where the book comes in. As a youth, around 17, 18, I began buying comic books. I gained a lot of value from Superman, especially Superman at that age. I was a big fan. I still am. Although I've developed some affection for a lot of other superheroes in time. But at the time, I started devouring comic books, and the leadership values modeled by superheroes, Superman, Spider-Man, Batman, Captain America, I couldn't pinpoint it at the time, but there was something that fascinated me about comic books. I mean, when you become a comic book fan, it's not just about the superpowers. It's about the person who uses the powers and how they use it. So that's what really fascinated me. Their character, who they were, how they used their powers, how they helped others, how they sacrificed constantly. Those are the things that really, really had an impact on me as a youth. So, like I said, there was definitely the Bible and my relationship with God. The men that I saw, the good men that surrounded me, especially in my local church, or sometimes on television, I would see some examples of good men, and I would model myself after them. And then the comic books, strangely enough, they are fiction, but the impact they have is not fictional, and that is why they're so popular. And I talk about that in the book. Like superhero movies don't become blockbusters just because. They become blockbusters because they really resonate with people. People just love seeing these guys swinging into action and putting their lives on the line time and again and again. So those are the things that really brought me into my own leadership, okay? So, and later in life, when I finally, I would say, embraced my gift, because I discovered my gift of speaking and writing at a young age. I was in my 20s when I discovered those gifts. But I wasn't courageous enough to put them, to make them as a gift for other people, to serve other people with them. Because it takes guts to embrace your purpose. It takes guts to say, you know what, here's my talent, here's what God gave me, and rain or shine, hell or high water, I'm just going to go out and serve people as best as I can with the gifts and talents that He's given me. Because sometimes you can discover your gifts and you're in a high-paying position, or you have responsibilities, you have children, you have a wife, and now all of a sudden you're like, well, you know what? I'm gonna drop my serious job, the job that has brought bread on the table for all those years, and I'm gonna pursue that new career, or that new venture, or that new business. I'm gonna start that business because I feel like this is my calling. That takes a heck of a lot of courage. And it took me a long time to actually go through it and actually do it. And there was a long process, which I'm not going to get into today. I spoke about it in a previous video. There was a lot of stuff that had to do with that. There was my own personal trials. There was my mother's death, who also had a huge impact on my decision. But eventually what ended up happening is I joined the John Maxwell team. I was looking for a training to become a certified speaker. Okay, that was the one thing I was looking for. I was like, I got to become a certified speaker. I want to be able to teach people leadership skills. I want to inspire them with speeches, with sermons, with my words, using my words like I used to do in church. And I was on the lookout. I had to find someone who was going to train me. I had to find a course or a program that was going to be adequate for me. And I was considering a lot of them. I mean, there was a lot of those programs out there, and for some reason, there was always a reason why they didn't resonate with me. Sometimes I thought they were too fluffy, or not their spirituality was not, how can I put this? I'm a Christian, right? So it had to be grounded to some degree in not only common sense, but in Christ, in the Bible. And those aren't that common, especially today. So when I found John Maxwell, and I learned, and I heard him preach and teach and give his leadership trainings and seminars, I really liked what he had to say. And then I saw an ad on Facebook that said, get certified as a speaker. I clicked on it, and there was a little video with John Maxwell giving the lowdown on his company, the John Maxwell team, and he was saying, hey, here's how you can become a leadership trainer. Here's how you can become a certified speaker. I was like, oh, wow. That was it. I mean, I didn't even think twice about it. That was it for me. I knew that was part of my purpose, and I embraced it. Okay? And here's the thing that John says all the time, that he's been saying ever since he began his leadership training. He says, and it's really important this, so jot that down, everything rises and falls on leadership. And that was one of the most important quotes, or that is one of the things that had the most profound impact on my why behind the book. So previously I talked to you about the superheroes, how much they had an impact, but also leadership had a huge impact when I started learning it. I mean, learning leadership. I learned leadership throughout life, but when you take a course on leadership and you learn from leaders how to become a leader, it brings you to that next level. And when I got to that next level, I became fascinated. I was like, wow, this is awesome. And when he explained what he meant by everything rises and falls on leadership, I got it. I mean, I really got it. Because he was told, it was in his own familiar style, his own particular style, John was asked, he says, John, what do you mean by everything rises and falls on leadership? And he looked at the guy and says, what don't you understand about everything? And here's the kicker. A lot of people think that becoming a better leader is not important because they're doing a job that doesn't require leadership. Okay, I used to be one of them. I totally understand that. But here's what you need to understand. If you're in a job or in a position where you don't need to use any leadership skills, you're in a following position, you're just following orders, here's what you need to understand. That everything rises and falls on leadership. Maybe at your job you're not called upon to exercise the role of a leader, and that's possible, and that's right. That's quite okay. There's no problem with that. But here's the thing. When he says everything, that means your mind, Okay, I think we're back. I'm sorry about that. Technical difficulties, folks. So you can always re-listen to the video once it's posted. It won't cut as badly as if you're listening live. Anyway, I'm sorry for that. Technical difficulties. So your business rises and falls on leadership. Your workplace rises and falls on its leadership. Corporations rise and fall on leadership. Churches rise and fall on leadership. Your community rises and falls on leadership. Your city, your country. You know where I'm going with this. So this is why I found leadership to be so important, and that I found it worthwhile to write a book about it, okay? So this is why I value leadership so much, because I understood that everything rises and falls on leadership. But like any good book, every good book that's out there begins with a big idea. You have to have that big idea, not only to get published. I mean, today people get self-published, and that's fine. I did it with my first little book. And for you guys who are interested in that, you can find my short little booklet on Kindle. It's called Thriving on Purpose. It's a short 40-page book. The first little one I wrote. So if you guys are interested, you can go see that on Kindle. But for a book to get published nowadays by a publisher, it has to have a big idea. And any good book begins with a big idea. And so there's a lot of books out there on leadership, right? I mean, you guys probably have read some or know some by name, or are familiar with some of those. But it's a very popular topic. But here's the thing. When I got the idea, I was actually, I don't even know what I was listening to. I had my earbuds on. I was at my day job, and I was listening to a podcast. I don't even remember what the podcast was. And the idea just fell on me. I just began thinking about superheroes. I don't know why Superman and Batman popped into my head, but they just did. And I was like, wait a minute. Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, Captain America, Optimus Prime, Wonder Woman, they are all fantastic leaders. All of them. So then what I did, I got excited, because I get excited sometimes. So I grabbed a piece of paper. I started writing down the names. All the names of the best superhero leaders I could think of. And right next to their names, I wrote how they lead. Because not everybody leads the same way. Okay? Everybody has a different style, a different approach to leadership. So I started writing how they lead. And when all was said and done, it took me about 5 minutes. When all was said and done, I had 10 superheroes. And I had written next to their names how they led. And I was like, this is fantastic. I had my big idea. I was going to write a book. I picked up my cell phone. I called my wife. I said, Liz, I'm so excited I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a book about superheroes and leadership. I'm going to write a book about how superheroes are such good leaders and how we can learn from them. And here's what we can learn from them. And I got really excited. She had to tell me to calm down, kind of like I am now. So she told me, calm down, calm down. And then she said this, and if you don't know my wife, let me just say this. My wife is my greatest encourager, but she's also my greatest critic, okay? Whenever I have an idea, usually she's the first one who's going to find what won't work with it. And she said this. She says, you know what? That's a really great idea. That was it. I mean, as soon as she said that, I knew I had not a great idea. I had a fantastic idea. So I got home that night. I started writing the book right away, okay? And it just poured out of me. It just poured out of me. That's what happens when you have a vision, when you have a big idea. The vision pulls you. That's what Steve Jobs says. You don't have to force yourself out of bed to make it happen. You're actually excited to get out of bed. You can't wait to get in front of that computer, type it away. And when you have to eat or go for a bathroom break, you find that it sucks because it's taking you away from your vision. That's what a real powerful idea, a big idea, a vision is so strong. And that's the impact it can have on your life. And that's the impact it had on mine, okay? Because I saw something really phenomenal. I saw something that could transform the lives of young men and women, young leaders, and even seasoned leaders. I saw a bright new angle on leadership that, for all I knew, for all intents and purposes, was not out there. I did some research previously to writing the book to see if there was anything out there that was similar to it. I just found a couple of little Kindle books, nothing major. I found a few articles online, but here's what I did. I read those articles and I was like, wow, they just talk about the superpowers. And they don't talk about how the heroes themselves are actually amazing leaders. So I got doubly excited. Obviously, when you're trying to do a little bit of market research and you realize your product is going to be kind of new and it's going to stand out, you get really excited. And that's what happened to me. Because I realized that the writings that already existed about it were all about the superpowers. And they would say, for example, you read an article, they said a good leader will learn to fly above his problems like Superman. So that's superpowered oriented. Or he will need to analyze his problems like Batman. Again, that's like it's an angle, but it's not like, look at Batman, here's why he's a great leader. You know, Captain America, they used the shield. They said you have to shield yourself from negative thoughts or from negative comments and stuff like that. It's all very cute, and it did work in what I read. But I did find something that I thought was even better, especially for the fans out there. I mean, if you're a fan of superheroes, you're gonna get your superhero fix. And if you're a fan of leadership, if you're all about leadership and you don't care much about superheroes, you're still going to get your fix, because the principles and values and concepts that I talk about in the book are extremely powerful leadership principles and concepts that are going to help you build yourself up into a better leader. So they work, the book works whether you're a CEO, okay, over 40 of a big company, or whether you're an 18-year-old who lives in his parents' basement and who likes to read comic books. The principles work because everything rises and falls on leadership, and leadership begins at home, and leadership is organic. And all these things put together means that leadership is for everybody. It's not just for the CEO. It's not just for the young man who's trying to figure out his own identity. It's also for the stay-at-home mom. It's also for someone who does manual labor. I mean, there's a lot of us are doing manual labor. Construction workers, mail carriers, police officers. Well, police officers are in a leadership role, but you know what I mean. I mean, there's these positions where people do, for the plumbers. You can still grow your leadership skills. And here's the thing, and here's another thing that I learned from John Maxwell. You grow your leadership, and guess what's going to happen to all the rest? Your family will benefit. Your community will benefit. Your children will benefit. Your spouse will benefit. Your company will benefit. Your corporation will benefit. Your church will benefit. You know where I'm going with this. Because when you grow your leadership, you positively impact everything around you. And that's what the book is based on. So I think I've covered pretty much everything. I got a good positive comment because I have my author copies that I have with me, and I've been selling a few books here and there to some friends and family. And there's a friend who told me he read the book, and he gave me some really good feedback. He said, you know what I love about your book? And here's what he said. Let me just find this here. That's what he says. He says, I love the fact that your book makes leadership palatable to both a CEO of an organization or a young teenager who's still living with his parents. And you know what? When he told me that, I was like, yes, that's exactly what I was aiming for. I wanted to add value to anybody, to those who are struggling and to those who are already leaders who've had quite a big impact. Because if you're a leader and you've had a big impact, you know more than anybody that you still need to improve as a leader. I mean, that's one thing that's really funny. I found in my business, in my coaching business, that the best leaders are the ones who are the most intentional about improving themselves. And I find that kind of ironic because they're already like really good. I mean, there are already people who are really into personal development and personal growth, and they're the ones who buy books like mine. They're the ones who read so much. They're the ones who look at other leaders and try to model themselves after them and learn from them. And isn't that ironic? And while the people who need it the most are the people who neglect it the most. I mean, when we're at the bottom, that's when we should look up and try to say, you know what, I gotta rise up. I gotta improve myself. If I'm gonna have more in life, I have to become more, right? And this book can definitely teach you how. One last time, I'm just gonna show you this book before I close out, okay? I did a book, I did a group on Facebook. So you go on Facebook, okay? Groups, lead like a superhero. Just ask to join the group and I will add you to the group. On the group, there's already 2 sample chapters that I put from the book. So you can read 2 sample chapters, get yourself familiarized with what I'm talking about in the book. And I'm posting some really good content. I'm actually working on a chapter, another chapter. I've mentioned this previously. It's a secret chapter and it's only going to be available to the people who join the group. So if you haven't joined the group yet, go Facebook/groups/lead like a superhero and ask to join the group, and I will add you to the group and you can read sample chapters. You just go on the, when you join the group, you can see it says files. You click on files and there's the documents. And whenever I do a teaching like I'm doing now, okay, like Super Leader Saturdays, most of my teachings, I copy them, I put them in Word documents so you can have the notes. I don't know if I'm going to do it with this one because it was really personal stories and stuff. I think the video will be more than enough. But what I do with the video also is I edit it. So I post it on YouTube and then I bring it back to the group as an edited, better visually version, whatever. So you guys can have that and it's more interesting, you know. So you have like sample chapters, the videos. I post some regular content on there. I'm going to post the progress of the book whenever I have book signings, whenever I have events that are about the book. So I'm going to give you guys exclusive content. So if you haven't already joined, make sure you do. I wish you a super Saturday, but also a super weekend. May God richly bless you. And I will see you next time, okay? God bless. Bye-bye.
I'm not gonna stand.